Well, it's good to see this turnout this evening, and we certainly appreciate you all taking time to come out. And I want to say thanks to John and Stacy for hosting this, and DKA for the good publicity to get everybody out this evening. I think that other than Jeff and I think the only member of the Model City Coalition Review Team that's here tonight is Todd Miller. And Todd, we're glad to have you. Thanks, and help us out if we need some blanks filled in here. But the Model City Coalition originally was founded or organized, I guess you would say, in 1996, and it was really a coalition of all the stakeholders of downtown Kingsport. And we developed the plan over the course of a year plus. I don't remember the exact time frame now, but in May of '97, I guess it was, Jeff, we presented the plan, and it was adopted by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. And through these last 14 or 15 years, one thing that I'll point out when we go through the presentation is we really didn't set up a mechanism for the public-private oversight of what was going on. But again, as you'll see in the presentation, a lot has happened downtown in these last number of years, and we're very optimistic about our future. So with that, let's take a look. The current Model City Coalition Review Team is made up of Jeanette Blazer, Miles Burdine, Tom Crosby, C.G. McCord, Todd Miller, and John Vachon. And Jeff is our staff support from the city, and on occasion the mayor and city manager look in on what we're doing and certainly try to keep up with our progress. But a couple of interesting photographs from 1967 to 2011, a lot of change. Since 1997, when the plan was rolled out, a great deal has happened in downtown Kingsport, and you can see a summary of these activities, but you know, we're in one of those great results. The Higher Ed Center has certainly been a great addition to downtown Kingsport, and we're really proud of what's taken place here with, again, the public-private partnerships to bring this about. The Broad Street streetscaping took place as a result of some of the planning that was done in '97 and grants that we received. The sculpture walk, parking garage is another great asset, medical offices. So you move on through, we've got a number of people living downtown, which is a change, I think, over these last 12 or 15 years. And that's one of the focus areas that you'll see in a few minutes. The number of restaurants has increased. We've got Food City downtown. We needed a grocery store, additional grocery opportunities, so that's there. The Board of Education, Chamber of Commerce, and the redevelopment that's taken place in that area is just tremendous. And we've seen a good bit of landscaping, and of course the signage, the wayfinding signage that's been erected all over town was also a recommendation in the original plan. Private taxable investment since 1998, over almost $42 million, so that's pretty significant investment in our downtown area. You know, and additionally 129 when you include the public and semi-public funding that's taken place. The recommendation that we came through, and actually in December December of 10, I guess it was, I had a conversation with the mayor, and we looked at reviewing the Model City Coalition Plan and bringing forth some additional recommendations and updates. And that's what this presentation is about. We actually presented this update to BMA in April of this year, and it was approved by BMA. So after a year of looking at what we had done and what we felt like needed to be our focus area in the next 4 or 5 years, the recommendation that we came to was, how do we move this progress along at a faster pace? And so we have recommended creating a small oversight team to guide and manage this plan, and to really be kind of a check and balance as we go forward. And you know, as I said earlier, you know, one of the fallacies, I think, of the original plan is there was not really an oversight mechanism to really monitor our progress and keep us on task with the objectives of the original plan. So this is an important component, I think, of any plan as we move forward. So we're going to hold work teams accountable. We have the oversight team will meet on a quarterly basis Right now, we're still actually meeting on a monthly basis, but we'll meet as needed and report to BMA, and we'll also make public updates periodically as we go through. You know, and just with any strategic plan, this needs to be a dynamic plan that will allow us to be opportunistic and to adjust as we need to. So that's also an important part of us having this oversight team so that we can make adjustments as are necessary. The three focus areas, you'll see our mission statement here: to make downtown Kingsport a viable place to live, shop, entertain, and work. And the three focus areas are housing, and this is really a critical component, because if you look back at the original plan, one of the key strategic objectives was to create a 24-hour critical mass of people in downtown Kingsport. And if you're going to have entertainment, if you're going to have residential growth in downtown, and all those things we want to see, you've got to create that 24-hour critical mass of people. And so housing is one of the key components to that. And you've seen some of the publicity about the Bray property, Supermarket Row, and the objective with that acquisition, or proposed acquisition, is to really help this housing initiative get off to a second start, I guess. We want to continue with the loft developments and other single-family residential downtown, but again, housing is the number one focus area. Also, magnets, we've talked about that. That's critical to us, really generating some of that traffic downtown, and also to help attract folks to live in the downtown area. And the magnets are made up of retail, entertainment, sports, all those things you would think of that would draw people to the downtown area. And I know Reggie's here. You know, this area right here, and you'll see in another slide, includes the carousel project. So we had our eye on that project a long time ago, Reggie. But you know, these are important aspects to downtown, and we have a team that's designated to magnet development. And then the aesthetic area, we need to continue to improve that, and you'll see when Jeff goes over the budget, you'll see that we've included in there some improvements to Wilcox Drive, Stone Drive, and some of these other areas. So that's an area we need to continue to beautify downtown and make it an attractive place to be. On the housing component, the recommendations we made were to ensure that the permitting process was effective, and really that ought to say continues to be effective, because I can tell you from personal experience in developing property downtown that the city of Kingsport has the best staff in our region in terms of helping you get building permits and variances and those types of things done. We've worked with them. I've worked with them personally on 2 bank buildings in the last few years, and it's been a great experience with our team, so with the city team. So that really ought to be that it continues to be effective. And that's a great advantage to us in working with developers. In my business, I work with developers all over Southwest Virginia and Northeast Tennessee, and that's one of the big pieces that has a huge financial impact on the timing and results of projects. So we've got a great city staff that takes care of that. We need to incent developers. If you look at what goes on in the other areas, there's incentives, or has been incentives for developers to come in and do residential development, and this recommendation would help with the downtown area. And then third, to acquire or control strategically critical property. And I mentioned the Bray property, the Supermarket Row area. That's exactly what that's about. It's not to put the city government into the housing business, but it's to help us control property and provide the appropriate incentives to bring development to downtown. And then market the opportunity to key urban developers, and that process is underway. There's been conversation with several housing developers, so you know we're underway with the execution piece of this. On the magnets, you know, certainly you want to target the high potential retailers and restaurants, and that's an active initiative. You know, again, we talked about acquiring or controlling critical properties. Facilitate sports and training venue. That's been a topic for some time, and is certainly on our list of important attractions. the Centennial Hill property, the development there, and that's one of the budget items we've got. There may be some other development opportunities there as well. Here you go, Reggie. We like your project. And then the renovation of Glen Bruce Park, and that would be in conjunction with the expansion and renovation of the library, and then develop phase 2 of the academic village. And, you know, again, this is just such a tremendous asset to downtown. And Jeff, how many students have we got downtown? 2,100. So, you know, again, that's part of building that critical mass in the downtown area. And then retaining government offices and those, if you look at some of the neighboring cities that have lost, you know, their financial center, or they've lost the government offices that have spread out of their downtown area, you know, that's a detrimental effect. So we need to ensure that we keep those offices in our downtown area. I won't read through every line item here, but again, if you look at the corridors we have, you know, continue to improve those and make the entrances to downtown attractive, and you know, that just makes it you know, a place people want to be when it's attractive and well landscaped. The Nolan Square, you know, continue to focus on developing the center and Main Street streetscapes. You know, we've encouraged the city to landscape and beautify the area between City Hall and the Justice Center. Curb extensions, you've seen a lot of that work. We need to continue that. And you know, there's been conversation about the trees on Broad Street, and you know, if you keep wrapping them with I call them the Christmas tree lights, but if you keep doing that, you know, you've got an ongoing problem with those lights growing into the trees as they grow and develop. And so we've recommended that we uplight those trees, and that'll give a more consistent effect, we think, to that. And then continue the facade and redevelopment incentive programs. That's an important aspect, we believe, for the aesthetics of downtown. And the budget. Jeff? He knows city speak on this better than I do. So.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say that one of the goals of the last Model City Coalition from '97 was to locate a corporate headquarters downtown. And, you know, Lynn did that. So he put his money where his mouth is, and he located Tri-Summit Bank downtown. He could have located it anywhere, and I think he did a beautiful job. And if you haven't been into that structure, you ought to check it out, because it does a great justice to the Church Circle Historic District and our whole downtown. So, Lynn, thank you for that. Just real quickly to go through the requested capital. Now, let me emphasize, this is capital. There's another sheet I'm going to go over in a minute that is for operating. So this is one-time money that would, almost all of this would come from bonded indebtedness. So when the city manager and the budget officer get together and they go through all the lists of funding requests, they look into the debt roll-off that is projected for the next several years. They also look at annexation. They look at vehicle replacement and all the other things that are coming into consideration, and they factor this into it. So while this is requested, he works within the parameters that are set by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, which right now we have one of the lowest tax rates that we've had in the history of the city, and he's charged each year to begin the budget process with a zero tax increase. So we're continually working to do that within that type of a time or a fiscal constraint. So for the fiscal year 2013, there's $5.5 million in earmarked capital that was requested. First of all, to control the Supermarket Row. You've probably heard or seen a lot in the paper about the Bray property, which is 7 acres across from the press, bounded by Sullivan Street, Clinchfield Street, and Press Street. It's not the entire block, but it's basically where the old Sullivan Rehabilitation Center over to Clinchfield Street. It's that part of the block. There are still private properties that are in there, but the Economic Development Board has agreed to purchase the property, and the only interest that the city has in the property, or the Economic Development Board, is in flipping that into private hands as quickly as we possibly can, and getting someone that's willing to do what we'd like to see with the property, which is multifamily housing primarily, although it probably will end up being more of a mixed-use type development. Control the property at General Shell. There's 72 of the 112 acres that is just across the tracks. When and General Shell made that available for public purchase. We would like to get control of that property for future development. Now, since that time, an economic development prospect has presented itself. So as Lynn mentioned, we have to be fluid in the planning process. So we're going to wait to see how that prospect pans out to determine whether we pursue that at this point in time. Controlled vacant land at the cement plant, 3.4 acres. That actually did get purchased by a private entity, I believe, in the last little bit. So that did become available, and that window did close pretty quickly. But the old Vulcan Materials across from the foundry on Main Street was one of the areas we had targeted to acquire. Stone facing of the underpass at Wilcox was one of the design criteria that we talked about doing to improve that location, and control the former gas station at Market and Sullivan as one of the gateways into downtown. Now, the way we handled this was the committee worked very closely with city staff and the various folks that would be influenced by this or affected by this to get these numbers. So they are pretty real numbers. Some of them are plug numbers, but most of them are very well thought out real numbers. And then we prioritize them 1 through 5 so that if the BMA looked at it and decided they wanted to cut some things out, we prioritized each year what we'd like to accomplish. For the fiscal year 2014, we'd like to see installation of the permanent uplights on Broad Street. Those would be basically in the sidewalk shining up so that, as Lynn mentioned earlier, the more temporary lights can be removed and you still get the same effect without damaging the trees long term. Centennial Hill Park Phase 1, you'll see Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3. Probably the keynote project out of this whole process was to create an awesome public space downtown, a place where people can gather and people can congregate, exercise during lunch hours, that sort of thing. And Centennial Hill, which is what we're calling Cement Hill, would be that trademark project. Now again, there's an economic development prospect that has presented itself that we will have to wait to let it play itself out to see if that is still going to be a possibility. But if it's not, I would hope that we could redirect that same amount of funding elsewhere in the downtown area to see an awesome public space somewhere else in the downtown area. But that was the project that came out of that. We actually are looking to hire someone to do a master plan for that. Again, after the coast is clear to proceed with that, we'd like to hire someone to lay out a master plan. Some of the things that have been talked about would include walking trails, biking trails. It would be much more of an active recreation type park as opposed to heavily developed. So that's kind of the intent of that. Nolan Square Streetscape Phase 1, if you look at the blocks bounded by Market Street, Cherokee Street, New Street, and Clay Street, you'll notice that those blocks are 4 lanes. The reason they're 4 lanes is when the town was laid out, there were supposed to be medians in those streets that created a square around downtown. We called that Nolan Square from the previous Model City Coalition development. That was never something that Nolan himself called it, but we called it Nolan Square because it does have an opportunity for green space. Now, we're not necessarily going to retrofit green space into that, but we would look to do streetscaping along that route. So we did several phases for Nolan Square streetscaping, and that plug number came from Louis Boswell, who is the city landscaping specialist. Also in 2014, beautify the space between City Hall and the Justice Center. I think in the previous plan, it actually said close the parking lot, divide it in half, and create a plaza between the Justice Center and City Hall. And we kind of decided that wasn't real practical based on the amount of volume of traffic that comes through there, but we could certainly do some improvements as far as aesthetics there. Plantings at Market and Sullivan, if you notice up in the upper one, it says control the former gas station at Market and Sullivan, and down here it says plantings at Market and Sullivan. So those go together. It will be to beautify that entrance, similar to what's happened at the intersection of Main Street and Sullivan Street at the old Foundry property, where you have the opportunity for sculpture and you have green space at that location. And the final project in 2014 would be opening a Kingsport History and Heritage Museum. There's been a lot of talk about that over the years. Where that would be located exactly has not been determined yet, but some money was earmarked to try to do that. And capture, I know I talked to Dick Burrow today at a civic club, and he got a loom out of the Borden plant that Eastman gave him that is now stored in the farmer's market. We've got some of the Kingsport press implements in the farmer's market. We'd like to have an appropriate place to display Kingsport's industrial heritage. 2015, Centennial Hill Park Phase 2, Nolan Square Phase 2, we've already talked about that. Improve entryway landscaping from Wilcox, Meadowview, and I-26 into town. That would basically be that whole corridor from Sheridan Square and Meadowview all the way into the downtown area, doing something to improve the aesthetics in that general area. Also in 2015, plantings and walls at Center, Sullivan, and Wexler. Basically right there where Joseph's Music Center is located in the Chinese restaurant, there are some very low walls that are designed and some landscaping to kind of soften that entryway into Kingsport. 2016, Centennial Hill Park Phase 2 and Nolan Square Phase 3 and 4 in 17, and then finally landscaping the corner of Clinchfield and Center, which would be out here just opposite the farmer's market where the car lot is currently located. We'd like to do a landscape corner at that location. So as you run that tally, that's $10.9 million in capital, which is a substantial investment in the downtown area, but it is not insurmountable because it's not a number that's not attainable, because it does fit very well within to the major capital budgeting process that the city manager operates. Operating funding, now this would be annual funding. We'd like to see $50,000 for making the State Theater operational. That was before anything was announced about the most recent tenant that tried to take over the State Theater and then decided to move to the Strand. So we kind of just put everything on hold to let that play itself out. But the idea, again, and you'll see words like facilitate a lot in here, because we don't have any interest in operating it or owning it. We just want to facilitate getting somebody else in there to operate it and own it. So facilitate the construction of an indoor sports training facility. One of the goals that John, I know, has talked about extensively, and we've talked about as my kids have traveled around and done sports, is that we have a visitor enhancement program that is intended to improve tourism opportunities and unique experiences in Kingsport. And many parents are driving and competing in other cities, playing basketball and volleyball and many other kinds of sports. So we'd like to have one of those facilities in Kingsport, and it is really discretionary as to where it goes. So since it is discretionary, we'd love to see it downtown. And we would love to see it over near the Bray property in that general area, to be able to be a magnet for folks coming in to bring their kids to play ball and an infusion of economic development downtown. Also 2013 facade grants. We're working with, and that goes hand in hand with the redevelopment incentive grants. We're working with the Kingsport Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Under state law now, the Housing and Redevelopment Authority has to sell bonds in the amount of the facade and redevelopment grants, and then the city reimburses that amount from the incremental tax increase in the downtown area since the last appraisal. I know that's confusing, but it's a new state law that is intended to help control how that money is used to be put back into the downtown area. So we would love to see those continue. We have several applications that are currently pending. I know Lynn Tully with the planning department has done a great job writing up the architectural design guidelines. We've made tweaks to that so that it's not just an entitlement. It is if you want to apply for one of these, we're going to ask you what you're going to do to contribute to the downtown area, not just necessarily add a canvas awning or a coat of paint. We want to see you do something more substantial to be rewarded for that activity. And then housing incentives. We started with a plug number of $1 per square foot, and we made it applicable to not just multifamily but also single family, because we'd like to see the Church Circle radial streets, folks come in there and flip those houses and move in and live downtown. But $1 a square foot is a number that we put in there. Actually, I think the mayor suggested that number as a way to entice folks to take a look at the downtown area. In the Capital Improvements Program, the CIP, not in the Model City Coalition report, but it does impact downtown, worth mentioning, is another $23.7 million of projects that we'd like to see happen. The Justice Center expansion, the Justice Center was built in the mid-'80s. It's now maxed out. It wasn't designed to go up, but it's more practical probably to go out. So that is in the planning stages now to look at expanding the Justice Center. The library expansion has been much talked about publicly. Would be looking to modernize and expand the library, probably at the current location, filling out that L shape and framing up Glen Bruce Park. Improvements to support the Carousel Roundhouse, $750,000, again to facilitate that. Awesome addition to Kingsport. Additional buildings at the Academic Village, believe it or not, we're now maxed out on space in the Academic Village, and it's time to start talking about Academic Village 2.0, if you will. We have acquired property, and we do have room for expansion, but as we do that, it's also going to require consideration of a second parking garage to support. So we're putting $4 million for that as well. So that's the budget numbers. Again, I would stress that they are budget requests, and they will be considered in the full context of the budget. One of the beauties of living in Kingsport, in my assessment, as I go and talk to other places, is that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen serves as the single financing authority for virtually everything, from schools to water to sewer to capital projects. And so you don't get a special purpose board who only thinks about one thing and then raises that fee and nickels and dimes you to death through all those different fees. They look at it more holistically and try to consider the impact on everybody. So as they do their budget deliberations each year, we need to be mindful of the decisions that they're making and encourage them to consider some of these for the downtown area. So, Lynn, I think that concludes the presentation, and if you want to take questions, we can do that.
Questions? I think we're supposed to stay close to the mic.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Reggie?
Yes, sir.
I have one that's not pertaining to the Carousel project.
Okay.
All right.
Over the last few years, there's been a lot of talk about a downtown performing arts center. Does the coalition feel like the State Theater, if that ever becomes a reality, will serve that need, or is there something else in mind that you thought about?
Okay, I'm going to rephrase the question for TV. So,
Okay.
The question was, has the Model City Coalition considered a performing arts center in the downtown area, and would the State Theater fulfill that need? Does that summarize it pretty good? You want to take a stab?
Yeah, Reggie, I'll take a stab at it. I think specifically we have not designated a new performing arts facility in this plan, but I think conceptually we recognize that that's a need downtown, and we've just tried to prioritize some of these things, but certainly that would be an asset to the downtown area.
I would just add that we have looked at the State Theater pretty extensively, and what we are told by artists groups is that it lacks dressing rooms, and if you start putting dressing rooms in, you're really going to start to constrict the space available for seating. So it may not be the optimum for all types of performing arts. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution. But in the entertainment magnets that were mentioned in there, I think that a performing arts center could certainly be one of the magnets that could be considered long-term. So I know we know that the Renaissance Center is too small. We know that Kingsport Community Theater has been operating for 65 years, and they continue to grow and flourish. And it would be wonderful to kind of coalesce all these into a downtown venue if we could make that work.
Well, thank you all very much. We appreciate your attendance.